Hi, thank you for joining me for this webinar on 5 habits for success as a college freshman. I'm Scott Ludostansky. I'm the executive director at State Street Education. We are a executive function coaching company for college students and high school students. I'm really excited that you decided to join us today. So let's dive in. Real quick, I just want to explain that I have been an executive function coach for college students for the last 14 years. And so a lot of what I talk about in this presentation are things that I have seen from college students, experiences I've had with them, their families, certainly our team of coaches and their work with college students. I'm talking here today about what are the things we're seeing, what's going on with college freshmen once they get on the campus, and what are the things they need to do to be successful. So I'm excited to jump in. Maybe you're a professional, maybe you're a parent, maybe you're a student. So hopefully after this webinar, you're able to have at least a few takeaways, a few ideas, a few systems, a few strategies of things that you'll be able to do or your student to be successful in college. So real quick, before we get into it, I do want to talk about, okay, so who are we talking about? I sort of have all these student titles, these classifications of really the students we're looking at when they're in high school, or maybe it's a gap year or whatever, but before they're starting college, who are these types of students that we're seeing that are going to be more susceptible to have challenges when they start? And so the underachiever student, I think this is one of the more common students we see, which is the parents, the teachers, the kid, everyone kind of knows where they can be performing at and they're underperforming. Sometimes they even call it the high achieving underperformer. But the student who is not living up to their ability level or kind of coasting or maybe slightly disengaged, I will reference a lot of times the high school model. The high school model is a student who is kind of stuck in the high school mode of operating. They study for tests the night before. They don't really do their readings. They don't put too much time into their work, but they're a bright kid and they get by and they probably get really good grades and everyone likes them, but they don't have to work that hard to do well in high school. And so when they get to college, they kind of keep operating that way. And sometimes that's a version of sort of this underachieving student. The disaster student, that's a student where things are really not going well. They're missing almost all their work. Their grades are really in the dump in high school. They're kind of in scramble mode, gotta take out a big pile of makeup work just to scratch and claw by. It's a student who's really struggling and kind of in that sort of disaster zone. The things will get better student. There's always high school students who say, yeah, well, I'm not trying that hard in high school. I'm not doing that much in high school, but just wait till college. Things will get better because I get to choose my classes. I'll be more interested in my major. The schedule will be different and that'll work better for me. I'll like bigger class, whatever. There's a lot of different reasons of why students say all of a sudden things are going to get better. And what we find is the pattern of behaviors continues. And so whatever's going on before college, not all the time, but most of the time, those patterns, those behaviors will continue on into college. Students with ADHD really directly impacts a student's executive functions. And so any students with ADHD are going to, they're going to have certain challenges. They might have trouble organizing or managing their work or just staying on top of schoolwork. And so certainly that's one of the more common students that I've seen in my career. The students who want improvement, the students who need balance. These are kind of similar, but they're students who need to figure out ways to make things better. And with the needs balance, it's a student who maybe they're in a million activities. Maybe they're in 6 or 7 AP classes in high school, and they're the cheer captain, and they're in the school play, and they're in the newspaper, they're writing for the newspaper and all these things. And so they can sometimes get overwhelmed or take on too much, and they aren't able to balance and kind of find out, how can I be effective? How can I set clear goals for myself? And how can I manage my time to be efficient and not run myself down? Okay, we're going to keep moving through these pretty quickly. The big/disappointing event. I usually focus more on that student once they're already in college, but sometimes it's the summer heading in, or there's something going on, um, where something in that student's life, there's a big event. It could be something unfortunate like a family member's death. It could be the first big breakup. It could be they tore their ACL and they're on crutches. Obviously, once a student's in school, it was COVID for a while. I would say mono's always on that list of like something big that's going to throw off the semester, throw off their functioning, and they're going to need to learn how to work through that, both academically and emotionally. The over social student, they get to campus, they kind of go nuts. The freedom's awesome. They can't find the balance with schoolwork and they sort of get swept up. Maybe they, join a house, whatever the case may be. That one's pretty self explanatory, a super stereotypical college story. But we do see that. The stagnant student, they're just kind of stuck in place. Nothing's ever changing. Maybe even literally, they're like not that active. They sit at home and they don't engage much with the world, and they're kind of withdrawn. That makes college difficult, certainly if students kind of keep that going into college and sort of stay isolated and alone. The depressed or anxious student, we certainly have worked with plenty of students in the past who have had a diagnosis of generalized anxiety disorder, major depressive disorder. That impacts a human being's ability to function. That impacts their ability to get to class, to wake up on time, to be able to get started when they want to get started. And so certainly those students are always on our radar. The difficult major student, this is kind of like the needs balance student from the last slide, but like a lot of times students jump into engineering, they jump into physics, they jump into chemistry, these more difficult majors. And it's just a massive amount of work. And even if they were a great high school student, which they probably are if they're already in these majors, they need to step up their game even more. And that can be challenging because the workload in those majors is just a lot of times significantly more than the rest of their, classmates who are studying other things. And then the huge adjustment student. Going to college is a big change for them, bigger change than normal, than the typical student. Now, sometimes this is a rural student who decides to go to school in Chicago, and now all of a sudden they're in a massive city. So sometimes it's small town to big city. This could be the flip of that, certainly. Or just even, even as I'm from Madison, Wisconsin. So sometimes students from Madison pick to go to a different part of the country. Madison certainly has a pretty similar outlook on life and politics and things like that. And so I've even worked with students who go from maybe, it doesn't have to be Madison, but maybe a more liberal place to a more conservative place. And they have to get used to other students' perceptions and views of the world because they haven't had to engage with different students or even different people who have those views or vice versa. So, sometimes these things come into play for students and they just kind of can kind of create this extra little, I don't even want to say challenge, but sort of just like a loophole, a different sort of little mini hurdle that students have to kind of figure out how to deal with. So, okay. So what does this all mean? These are a lot of the kind of common characteristics we see from these students. They're transitioning into school, or even maybe after the first couple months of school, what can happen is their confidence can really start to dip. They can really start to feel like it's too hard for them, or maybe they can't hack it, or this is never going to happen. Like we've kind of seen all the variations of a student's confidence. They are at a very, very crucial moment in time. This is, one of the reasons I like working with college freshmen is because whether I was a therapist or a teacher and now a coach, like I've seen how monumental that moment in time is when a student is transitioning from high school to college, and the different directions it can send them in. And I've certainly seen students who have crashed and burned, and I've sort of seen the ripple effect and the years long, sometimes years long, like challenges and sort of mindset shifts that they've had and trouble that they've had kind of getting back, whether it's college or having a professional career or having relationships or whatever. I've really seen that deeply impact their emotional and physical well-being. Um, and I've seen the other thing happen. I've seen students who maybe don't even need a college degree for what they want to do, but it is in their mind that they're going to graduate college, and they learn how to make it work, and they're able to get through, and they are able to excel, and they feel amazing, and then they can go on with their life, and it's something that they always kind of um, can sort of look at and maybe tip their hat at and know and have as part of their identity that they are a college graduate and they were able to do it. And so I've seen it have a drastic impact on students' lives. Now, of course, being in college is a little more pressure packed. It costs money. Students have particular careers in mind that they want to do in many cases, and so there is a lot on the line. There's a lot of pressure. There's parent pressure. There's self pressure. There's community pressure. They're coming from a place where everyone goes to college and ends up being successful. So there's just a lot of pressure, and kind of all these things start building on a student. So if they're struggling, it can really kind of trickle out quickly into various aspects of their lives. Okay. So what's different? Okay. Like, pretty obvious. Most things are different. Students are in class way less. They have way more unstructured time. They're only in class 3-4 hours a day. They're, they in many cases, if they go to a big state school, a Big Ten school, whatever, like they're probably not getting to know many teachers, especially freshman year when they're in bigger classes because the professors have a 2, 3, 4, 500 person class. It really comes down to the student being more independent, doing more on their own, being able to initiate their work, to find the places on campus they need to work. And there's less parent interaction. So I don't look too much at the big picture when it comes to this. I more look at the kind of small things, like if a student's in high school and they come home and their parents just say, "Hey, how was your school day? Do you have a lot of homework?" Like just basic questions. Students kind of lose that sort of embedded prompting, and so they're just not getting reminders maybe in the same way that they would, even though the reminders aren't particularly intense. They're there, and so I just think based on not being in class as much, not being around their parents, not kind of just having constant interaction, it's a different format. And for some students, that's really difficult, especially coming out of high school where a lot of schools don't give nearly as much homework as they used to. And now they're in college where they have to be studying on their own, learning, doing maybe not every second of work, but like 98% of their work is going to be done outside of class. Um, so students really have to be structured. They have to manage their time. And some of these things I'm talking about as we get into the 5 skills for success, they'll be there. So let's jump into them. Number 1 is organization. One of the quickest ways that we see students have a bad semester is they are not organized, particularly on their computer. And you can see it. Students struggle with class sites. That's how we see students kind of really trip up early on, is they don't even understand the class site. They don't understand, oh, to do my math homework submissions, I actually have to click to this different site that I have to register on and click and set up a username and password and login. And I have one of those due every 3 days. And sometimes students just can't even understand and grasp the basics of what's going on in a class. And then what do I need to do to be organized in that class? So it's really important. And I think before they get to school, to be able to kind of come up with their own systems, both physically and electronically, to determine, okay, how am I staying organized in these classes? And how do I want to organize my files, and how often do I want to check these things? How often do I want to be on top of them? Certainly, like there's some bullet points here, like buying textbooks before class. That's really important. A lot of students don't get those before the semester starts, but just buy them. College costs a lot of money. The books are one of the smallest costs, even though I know they're expensive. but having a system for how to be organized, and then having a consistent spot for the essentials. I find students who really run into problems with this. I lost my phone, I lost my computer, I lost my ID card, I don't know where my keys are. um, so kind of mapping out even within the dorm room of like, here are my go-to spots. Whether it's getting back from class or getting back from the gym or getting back from a night out, like it should be your things should be in the same spot every time. And then the organizational systems for each course should be created and maintained throughout the semester. There really shouldn't be any problems with this, but we do find students that struggle. So number one is students have to be organized to be successful in college. Number two, and this one should have like 12 stars on it because this is the most important one. And it's the time management and planning. Students need to really understand, I need to balance the long term with the short term. And I need to have a system that allows me to prioritize my time, to allocate my time in the right ways, um, to not fall behind, to hit every deadline. And ultimately, the ultimate goal is, well, let's produce high quality work with less stress. And I've worked with a lot of students who have gone through high school and been stressed out of their minds, scrambling last second, working at 2, 3, 4 in the morning, really trying to hit deadlines and just being so worried and anxious. And they get to college and all of a sudden we're working together and that goes away because there's no curveballs, there's no last second, discoveries of deadlines. There's a system and it works. So here's the system. I call it a 3-tier system, but it needs to have all of these things. Number one, the big picture view. This is big deadlines. It's, of course, the course schedule, but then it's big deadlines are papers, projects, tests, presentations, whatever. All of those big things need to be clear on the monthly calendar through the whole semester. This can be done day one when all those the syllabus for each class comes live. It's like, here's my system. I can see every single big deadline, every far out thing. Then that's tier one. Tier two, my master list. I need to have a list of everything that needs to be done for the next 2 weeks. Submissions, assignments, quizzes, readings, textbook chapters, everything, anything I have to do, including non-school things, right? I need to email my grandma on her birthday. I need to reach out to this professor to see if there's a research opportunity. I need to apply for a job, or I need to, confirm my schedule for work or whatever. Anything, mostly school, but other things too. Master list, everything for 2 weeks. Tier one, tier two, tier three is, okay, what do I need to do today? And this can be done in a planner. But like, okay, what's my plan for today? What do I need to do today to make it a good day? And also looking ahead, so tomorrow's not more stressful. And so, 5 days from now is not more stressful. What do I have to do to really get done with the short-term stuff and chip away at the long-term stuff, or just continue studying for my classes? And so this really becomes the key. I mean, students have a lot of unstructured time. They're in class 3, 4 hours a day. Maybe they go to the gym, they eat some meals, and that leaves them with about 10 hours or something. So they really need to, within this system, map out, well, where's my time going to? What are the times I'm spending in the library or meeting up with a friend or going to Starbucks? I find when students have a system for this, when students are able to execute it, maybe not 100%, but 90%, but they really get the hang of it, that's when they truly are learning how to be successful in college and how to feel better on a daily and weekly basis, because they're not scrambling and they're not just so stressed. So time management and planning, to me, this is the number one skill a student can master if they want to do well on campus. Initiation. So when I mentioned earlier, not knowing how class sites work, that's kind of the common way that students sort of go down. This is another common way, is they're just not able to get started. Or I could say they procrastinate. But I like to say, get started. So the goal is, how do I initiate my work when I need to? If I'm planning and I'm managing my time, then I at least know what I need to do and when I need to do it. The next step is I need to get started. And so we want students to build up an infrastructure around the work that they have to do. I always tell students, like, our goal is to increase the likelihood, to increase the chance that you will get started when you want to. So if it was 30% before, we want to get it to 70 or 80%. Like, we want you to be able to get as close to 100% as possible. We want it to be very, very, very likely that you do the work when you need to. Because if you're not doing your work, you're missing deadlines, you're falling behind, and that means not good things in college. So we encourage students to be as detailed as possible when creating their initiation infrastructure. Things like, where am I going? When am I going? Um, what audio consideration should I have? Visual. What do I need to bring with me so I don't need to keep getting up? Do I need to bring snacks, drinks, coffee? For some students, medication will be relevant. Like, what are all these things? Am I going with a friend? Am I going by myself? Um, and we really want students to have multiple places on campus where they're able to go, have it be their space where they only go to do work and be productive. Um, and certainly, we've seen with college students, any level of accountability is going to make them more successful in this area. So going to the library with a friend, or meeting a friend in the dorm study lounge, or whatever, always increases the likelihood that work is going to get done. Number 4 is goal setting. So most students kind of, maybe in their head, they say, I want to get good grades. I want to make the dean's list. I want to get a 3.6 or whatever. But I think it's important for students to go beyond that and really set specific goals in very specific areas, because of the kind of things it says on the slide. They can lose motivation, they can lack follow through, they can kind of get burnout towards the end of the semester and start cutting corners or skipping a thing here or there. And so goals, what they do is, of course, they set our track and where we want to get, but also they make the connection between, here's this little, maybe very barely important thing, and here's the connection it has to my overall grade, or here's the connection it has to my overall GPA or my chance of getting into law school or whatever it is. And so we really like to have students both set a semester goal, but then even set more specific goals, course by course. And then within those courses, unpack them to each section of the grading in the syllabus. So it's like, okay, in my microeconomics class, midterm 1 is 15%, midterm 2 is 15%, midterm 3 is 15%, this paper is 20%, the finals, whatever. I'm losing track of what I'm adding up in my head, but setting goals for each specific category. What am I going to get on papers? What am I going to get on tests? What am I going to get on participation and attendance? 100. What am I going to get on homework, on quizzes? And so by kind of getting to know these things and setting goals in each area, it gives students an aiming point for every single piece of work they're doing, which is really important, particularly if they're working towards the end of the semester and the goal is, I want an A. I want a 93% in that class. Well, that's hard. That's a high grade. And so they're going to have to be very diligent and very goal oriented in the work they're doing in every single category in every class, so that they're learning, so that they're timely, and all these things. It really increases accountability. And certainly we work with students who like to set goals in other areas as well, most of which are going to be found in the next slide. We have students who like to set sleep goals. So the other piece of this is mobilizing on campus. How do we stay active? How do college students, sure, sleep right, eat right, exercise, those things, but also get involved in activities. Sometimes I use the term like forced friendships, but like join groups, join clubs, find ways to force friendships. I think most people stereotypically think of like, a fraternity, a sorority, but that's just some students, and sometimes it's the entrepreneurship cohort in the specific business dorm they wanted to get into, or it's the fencing club or whatever, whatever it is. Join things like that, particularly if you're a student. where making friends isn't the easiest thing, or you're shy, or you're an introvert, or um, maybe I've worked with students who consider themselves awkward, um, and they have a harder time making friends. So like doing all of these things, becoming active, and I didn't even mention, but using resources too, getting to know TAs, getting to know professors, jumping into office hours and using tutors and things like that. These are almost all like those ones are like effort things. It's like I need to get somewhere, I need to be organized enough to know when it is and put it on my schedule and get there. But being more active on campus always leads to success. And the opposite of that is what I touched on earlier, which is I'm sitting in my dorm room and I'm not leaving it very often, besides maybe for class, and maybe my hobbies are playing video games, watching Netflix, and on and on and on. So it is really important for students to kind of have awareness of these things. And this is where I said sometimes we do set goals. Students set sleep goals. Students set exercise goals, pick up basketball goals. I want to go 4 times a week to play pickup basketball. Great. That's a great goal. I think it's important. And it's important for students to have awareness of this. And if they're not able to do it on their own, certainly working with a coach can help push them and get them out the door to engage in these things right away when they get on campus. Okay, I'm going to cut the recording short of questions, so I don't record anyone asking me anything. But I really hope that everyone learned at least one thing during this webinar. And certainly, if you want to get in touch with me, you can email me at Scott@State Street Education. And if not, I really hope that whoever you are here for finds success in college and has fun and excels academically.